9248. This crash is a depiction of how human factors played a role, also weather, and also systems also contributed to this crash as well. Our agenda, we're going to be going over the overview of the accident. We have some airplane and crew information. We have a METAR, the pilot system breakdown, airport layout, scenario, aftermath, NTSB findings, probable cause and contributing factors, airport improvements, legal actions, road safety, and the airplane's legacy. Some key terms we're going to be talking about today is going to be the OPC, which is an onboard performance computer. We have the EMAS system, which is Engineered Materials Arrestor System. We have a TALPA ARC group, that's a Takeoff and Landing Performance Assessment Aviation Rule Committee. We do have the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board. We have the METAR, which is the Meteorological Aerodrome Report. We have a RVR, which is the Runway Visual Range, and we also have the PWB, which is the Performance Weight and Balance. The overview of the accident, so this happened on December 8, 2005. I actually want to point out this date. I want you guys to keep this date in your mind when we talk about our later slides. December 8th is pretty important. This happened in 1914. This is a Boeing 737 operated by Southwest Airlines. The registration number at the time was 471WN, November 471WN. This is a phase of a landing, and this happened between Baltimore Washington International and also Chicago Midway. So some airport challenges, like we were talking about, Midway is known for having some of the shortest runways in the US. There is no space in between the end of the runway and the city streets. And the target runway for this actually was 31C, which is 31 Center. And here you can see the city streets just right outside here. So you can see that Midway did have a lot of challenges, and I want to talk about how the FAA was actually in contact with Midway before this accident actually happened. They talked about implementing the safety zone. So most airports are supposed to have 1,000 feet safety zone, and actually Midway did not have that. So FAA did contact Midway, and they actually had a release from the city, that the authorization from the city saying that they were okay not to have it, which is not very smart. Here I have an aerial view. This is actually not 2005. This is actually still today. So you can see that the airport is still very close. They do have the EMAS installed now, so it makes a difference, but it's still very close. Our crew information, we have Captain Bruce Sutherland. He was 59. He had over 15,000 flight hours. He is an Air Force pilot. He was in the Air Force for 26 years before he went over to Southwest. And then we have our first officer, Stephen Oliver. He's 34. He has 8,500 flight hours. Not as many as the captain, but he did play a captain. He was a captain at his previous airline before he came over to Southwest. And they did have their recurrent training, so July 2005, July 2005, February 2005, and this crash happened in December, so they were current and up to date with their training. Okay, so this was a multi-leg segment. Southwest does multi-leg, so I want to point out that they started here, Baltimore, Washington, and then they were going to Chicago Midway. They were supposed to continue on to go to Salt Lake City and in their route in Las Vegas. However, that did not happen. We are between these two airports for this accident. The airplane overview. So we have our serial number 32471. They received their airworthiness certificate on July 13, 2004. So the plane was brand new. They had their new turbofan engines. It only had 5,000 flight hours, and because it's a 737, it was only 137 passengers allowed on board. So we have our METAR report. So this is Chicago Midway, and this METAR report is on the 8th day, and it's 22:53 Zulu time, which is actually about, because the daylight savings time is 4:53. So this METAR report was over 2 hours old that the pilots were using before they landed. So we have the wind at 100 at 11 knots. We have half a statute mile. We have snow, freezing fog. We have broken clouds at 400 feet and overcast at 1400. And then we also have our -3 temperature and our -4 dew point. We have our altimeter setting at 300, and the runway that we're using is 31 Center, and then we have our runway visual range at 4,500. So I wanted to talk about some systems before we get into our scenario.
What was the RVR?
4,500.
Thank you.
Some systems that we're gonna talk about before we get into our scenario, the onboard flight performance computer. So this isn't around anymore. They actually phased out of this in 2014, but it was still used during our accident. So they use the OPC to calculate flight distance. You can see here that they put in an 8-knot wind, but the OPC limits, if you have anything poor, if you input any poor option, the wind limits to 5 knots. So this is a silent reset that the OPC does. It's not very apparent to the pilots that the system reset the knots, the maximum knots in the wind to be 5. So the landing distance would be underestimated for this accident. I also want to talk about the auto brake. So Southwest recently came out with their auto braking system in their 737s, which is why this plane was brand new, because they had just incorporated the auto brake into the system. Pilots weren't authorized to use auto brakes at this time. Southwest pushed back the implementation of using auto brakes over several times, and unbeknownst to the pilots, they actually pushed it back again days before this crash happened. The pilots were not aware of this, and they were the last major airline to start using auto brakes, and they were never given simulated time to practice using the auto brakes. It was only reading manuals and learning as you go. But like I said, since it was never implemented, it had never been used in a 737 by Southwest pilots. So we're gonna get in to our scenario. We have our captain, Ariane, and then our first officer, Wesley. We have our ATC, who is Folahan. We have our ARC, Xavier Holt, and I'll be narrating. So this is our accident live reenactment. If everybody can put on their seatbelts. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So Baltimore Washington International Airport, Southwest 1248 is already behind schedule. The flight was scheduled to take off at 15:50. The crew and passengers have been sitting on the tarmac for over 2 hours due to the deteriorating weather in Chicago. During this long delay, Captain Sutherland and First Officer Oliver used the time to discuss their strategy. They are flying a Boeing 737 equipped with the airline's new auto braking system. This is a major fleet upgrade, but training has been limited to reading manuals rather than flight simulators. Because of the blizzard conditions at Midway, the crew makes a critical decision. They will use auto brakes for the first time in live operations.
I see we got auto brakes on this deal. You used them much?
No, never. Most of the guys are still jumping in on the pedals manually.
Yeah, me neither. I've only read about them in the new manuals. Well, it's a mess in Chicago. Let's plan on using them if we land.
The small moment of hesitation foreshadows the confusion that will happen on the runway. Safety is on their minds. They nominate 2 alternate airports, Kansas City and St. Louis Lambert. Just in case Chicago weather drops below landing minimums, to give themselves the most flexibility, they load an extra 90 minutes of fuel. It seems like a safe bet, but it comes with a hidden cost. The extra fuel makes the aircraft significantly heavier, and in the aviation world, more weight equals more momentum. And on a contaminated snow-covered runway, the weight will make the plane much harder to stop. At 17:58, Flight 1248 begins its takeoff roll. The flight receives their 3rd revision to the flight plan, which then changes the runway and braking conditions. Originally, the flight was supposed to land on runway 04 right, but they actually got new, since the wind had changed, they were gonna have the tailwind. You would think that they would wanna come in at 13 left, but however, because of the runway visual range, they weren't able to do that, so they had to come in with a tailwind instead of coming in with a headwind. Okay, so on December 8, 2005, Southwest 1248 is descending into the Chicago blizzard. To cut the tension of the deteriorating weather, the crew relies on dark humor and movie quotes, but they are about to face a chain of events that will eventually lead to a disaster.
We're all counting on you. Picked the wrong day to stop sniffing snow. Glue.
Yeah.
One more look for good measures. I think you look good and clean, my man.
All right.
4 until Glenn.
Clear the approach, huh?
Yeah. 4,500.
Southwest 1248, reduce speed 170 to runs, and then contact tower that runs.
170 to run, tower, hit. They have a great night. Southwest 1248.
The controller released a report from a plane that just landed.
Southwest 1952 reported breaking fare. Except at the end it was poor.
Oh, we don't want them.
Ha! No. If it's poor, we don't want to hear it.
Despite the jokes, while in the holding pattern, the crew checks their onboard performance computer. And actually, I want to point out, while they were in the holding pattern, ATC had told the pilots that the runway was being cleared for them because Chicago was up to 10 inches of snow at this point, so the runways needed to be cleared very often. As the first officer selects poor braking, the software's hidden logic silently defaults the tailwind from 8 knots to 5 knots. The pilots are now looking at a safety margin based on a wind that doesn't exist. Also, the OPC makes a dangerous assumption. Its calculation for a stop assumes that the pilots will deploy maximum reverse thrust immediately upon touchdown. It does not account for human hesitation, mechanical delays, or a new braking system causing a distraction.
I'm running the numbers for poor braking and 8 knot tailwind. Computer saying we good with everything maxed out. We have 40 feet of runway left.
40 feet? That's a razor thin margin, but it's a positive number. We'll take it.
Yeah.
All right, slowing. Go flaps to 5.
Flaps, oh, they cinco.
Let's see, 60 miles is lean side 11. Yeah, all right, landing gear down here, sir.
Landing gear down 3 grand.
The cockpit fills with the sounds of the aircraft's automated warnings and the clicks of switches. A tailwind is pushing them toward the runway faster than they'd like.
Yeah, God, buddy, tailwind. Yeah, God.
Yeah, good old tailwind.
Yeah.
As they reach the final stages of approach, the tower passes along one last piece of information that should have been a red flag, a braking action report from a pilot who just landed 2 minutes before them.
Gulfstream 3 Kilo Foxtrot, safe braking action. Braking is fair to poor.
The pilots hear fair and think that they are safe. What they don't realize is that the Gulfstream is a 58,000-pound private jet. Southwest 1248 is a 126,000-pound heavy airliner. Because of the extra fuel loaded in Baltimore, they are carrying 70,000 pounds of extra momentum. What feels like fair braking to a light jet is actually a recipe for disaster for a heavy 737. Furthermore, the ATC fails to provide the full picture. He relays the fair reports but omits the specific mu friction values. And I want to point out that mu friction values is actually a Greek term used in aviation based on calculating the slippery distance of the runway. And the fact that the previous pilots found at the end of the runway, the exact spot where Southwest 1248 will be struggling to stop.
All right, let's go flaps to 15.
Flap left time.
All right, glide slope looks like it's captured. Let's go 30, sir. I just got a 3. Just disregard the approach warning if we get one.
They run the final checklist. Everything is set for landing, but the margin for error is shrinking.
Before landing check, armed green light,
Landing gear.
down 3 green,
Flaps.
40 green light.
Before landing checklist complete.
The runway lights of Chicago Midway appear through the blizzard. The captain prepares to transition from instruments to visual flight.
All right, 1,000 feet, 36 sync, is 850.
You can see the ground already.
No peeking.
500.
Southwest 1248, runway 317 clear to land. Wind 090 at 9 braking. Action fair to poor.
Clear to land 3-1 center. Southwest 148. 1248. 400. Approaching minimums.
Going outside, landing, sir.
The wheels strike the slush. The crew feels the auto braking gauge, but this creates a fatal distraction. Because they feel the plane braking, the captain hesitates on the manual reverse thrusters.
Oh, baby, I guess it comes on. Come on, baby.
About 2,000 feet to go.
The captain has moved the reverse levers, but not into the max position. For the next 18 seconds, the plane slides toward the fins at nearly 100 miles per hour, and the engine's providing almost no help.
You jumping on it? Wait, get those back there.
First Officer Oliver realizes that the levers aren't deployed. He reaches over and helps the captain jam the thrust reversers into the maximum position, but the physics are now against them.
Son of a bitch. Jump on the brakes.
I'm on them.
Get back there. We ain't going. Hang on, man.
Hey, we in trouble, we in trouble.
We're not stopping. All right, keep it straight. Hang on.
Oh, shoot.
The aircraft skids into the intersection of 55th and Central, striking 3 vehicles. One of the cars carrying the Woods family, the nose gear of the 737 collapses directly onto their vehicle. Here you can see that the plane has blew through the blast fence and is already on 55th and Central.
Southwest 1248, do you read?
Tyler, we went up the end. We in the street. We hit some cars. We need emergency equipment immediately.
Shutting down.
Copy that, Dispersion Arc. All units, we have an alert 3 from 737 in the roadway at 55th and Central. Attention all aircraft, Chicago Midway is now closed. All inbounds divert to O'Hare, Midway is closed. ARF-1, Midway Tower, respond to the Southwick via taxiway Yankee, short of runway 13 right.
Copy, ARF-1 responding to runway 13 right, the Yankee.
As you can see, our ARC driver has a calm demeanor, as he should, because you don't want to freak everyone else out. Because something bad happened, you want to have that calm response to the accident. And here you can see he's going to taxi on Yankee.
ARF-1 holding short of runway 13 right at Yankee.
ARF-1, cross runway 13 right, short of runway 13 center.
Crossing runway 3 right.
Even though our ARC driver is going to an emergency, you must stop and hold short because you never know if any planes are coming in and things like that. Yes, the tower did close the airport, but you still have to get clearance before you go.
ARF-1, cross runway 13 center, turn left on runway 31 center, proceed to the south perimeter of the fence.
Crossing 13 center, turning left on 13 center.
So his drive is about a minute over there to get to the runway.
Attention all aircraft, Chicago Midway is now closed. All inbounds divert to O'Hare, Midway is closed.
It's important to say that more than once so that aircraft is aware of that. It's very important if we have an emergency like this going on, you want to make sure that you're constantly repeating it just in case anyone thinks that, or they didn't hear the last message, or they just switched over. Okay, so our trucks reach the intersection in less than 60 seconds. They find a scene of total chaos. While the passengers on the plane are beginning to evacuate, the first responders realize the tragedy in the street.
Tower ARF-1 on scene, we have a hazard in the roadway, multiple vehicles struck. We have a fatality on the ground, looks like a younger age male, approximately 5 years of age, with deformity to the back of the head. We have a visual on the fuel leakage from the wing, no active fire. We're deploying the turrets to lay the plane blanket down.
Because of the rapid response of the captain's quick engine shutdown, a post-crash fire is avoided. Tragically, 6-year-old Joshua Woods, a passenger in one of the cars that were striked, was killed. He is the only fatality of this accident, and his death will become the driving force behind the mandatory installation of the EMAS systems at the short runway airports, similar to Midway. This investigation followed would change aviation software and pilot training forever. Okay, so the aftermath here, the 6-year-old boy in the vehicle struck by the airplane, he was killed on impact. The airport remained closed for several hours, and upon reopening, runway 31 center, of course, continued to be closed because of the blast fence being gone and things like that. So on December 10th, the airplane was actually finally towed back for the final inspection. So the aircraft actually sat there for days. So if you missed it, at the talk of the town, you could go over there and see the airplane just sitting there. Okay, so we have our injuries and casualty breakdown. So 18 out of 98 passengers reported minor injuries. So there were 7 ground injuries. Because it struck 2 cars, there was also more injuries. Of course, the family of the Woods, not only the little boy who had the casualty, his family also did get hurt there too, and the other car as well. We have the Chicago Fire Department that came within minutes, establishing level 1 trauma triage on 55th Street. So here are some pictures you can see. This is the blast fence, and they blew straight through that. And actually, I want to point out, so they needed 5,300 feet to stop their aircraft, but they ended up stopping at 5,000 feet past where they were supposed to be because of the car. So if the car wasn't there at that time, if that Woods family and the other cars weren't on that road, they would have kept going, which could have been more dangerous. But not that it's a blessing, but it just so happened that the plane stop there instead of keep going into the town. Here's another picture, you can see the fence all gone. And also, here's another picture you can see. Actually, the back of the aircraft you can see is in perfectly good condition. The wings are good, everything is good. It's just the forward fuselage and then the engines that had some debris on them.
Back of the airplane.
The empennage, sir.
Empennage.
I'm sorry. Okay, so here we have our NTSB findings. So there was no evidence of fatigue or medical issues with our crew. The ATC controller did not follow the FAA guidelines when he didn't report all the braking action. To give you an example of that, when he talked about the Gulfstream reporting their fair to poor braking action, that was irrelevant for a 737. Okay, so the OPC software also contributed to the pilot calculation errors, and the Southwest policy for the thrust reversers also caused a lot of confusion. So they determined that the probable cause was the pilot's failure to reverse thrust in a timely manner. I pointed out that they waited 18 seconds before trying to implement those max reverse thrusters. The contributing factors, so the pilots didn't have accurate training and guidance when it came to their policies. And if they received two different braking reports, they were supposed to use the most restrictive braking report, which was poor, instead of saying fair to poor. They should have took poor and used that and to know that they had to maybe divert or that they couldn't land there. So also, like I said, they did have the extra fuel to go to another airport, but they didn't. Okay, so the operational failures, this was the first time the use of the auto braking system, so it created the distraction.
Go back to the slide before. Thank you.
Okay, and then the first time use of auto braking system created confusion. I think that anybody using something for the first time, if they haven't used it in a simulator, would be confused about how to do that. And then also the lack of clear procedure for reverse thrust timing and the landing sequence, of course, which the confusion in the cockpit. So here we have a graph of the feet that they needed to actually stop here. You can see it's 5,000 feet, but they stopped at the 5,000 instead of the 5,003. So Southwest updated their training policy, and they also they updated the OPC to display clearer warnings. So now you can see that it wouldn't be a silent reset with the 8 to 5 knot tailwind. You would see it, that it would say, oh no, that's not allowed. And then they also improved their winter operations training as well. So some airport improvements. Because of the young boy that died, this was actually a rapid response of getting the EMAS systems installed into Chicago Midway. And then the FAA also created the Takeoff and Landing Performance Aviation Rulemaking Committee, which is known as the TELPA ARC group. And what they did is they have numerical runway coding, which is the crew, is the aviation management talking to the crew so that they can know how to, the conditions of the runway, condition codes. So the codes that we use now flying, this is because of them. Even though it's new in 2016. So some legal actions. Here is actually a copy of a report made by a passenger. He named all three, Southwest, Boeing, and the city of Chicago in his lawsuit. A private settlement was reached by the Woods family in 2007. Keep in mind that this happened in December of 2006, so 2007 was right around the corner. They probably wanted to hurry up and get that settled with the family. And there was no criminal charges against the pilots. So the pilots, now I want to talk about Bruce Sutherland, which was the Air Force captain previously. He ended up taking this as his time to retire. And then First Officer Oliver, he actually is still flying for Southwest. You might see him in passing one day. The NTSB didn't find it fault on the first officer because they felt that the captain was the one who was flying the plane and he didn't deploy the max reverse thrusters. But First Officer Oliver, he did tell the captain the reverse thrusters, so he reached over and he tried to help him. So that's why Southwest didn't find him at fault for this accident. So road safety and Joshua's honor, road safety campaigns were launched all over Chicago. And then we have some airplane damage, so the nose gear and the forward fuselage was crushed, and both engines require replacement due to the debris. Unlike most runway incursions, that this airplane was not written off. And then also, it was a multi-million-dollar rebuild. So Boeing and Southwest, they worked worked together and they did a rebuild of the aircraft. So the airplane's legacy and its return to service, although it was a ground fatality, Southwest had a tradition where they would retire any number in a fatal crash. So they ended up doing that with this aircraft. So in July of 2006, they petitioned to the FAA if they could change the tail number of the aircraft before its return to service. And finally in 2006, the plane emerged from the hangar known as November 286 Whiskey November. And the airplane is still active and flying today, becoming one of the airline's symbol of resilience in the darkest days. So actually I have a picture here. You can see that the plane right now, today's Wednesday, 2026, 12:57. The plane is flying right now. They're on their way to Norfolk. And so the plane is active.
I'm trying not to remember that till.
Sounds ready to go for it.
Okay, so I want to talk about some new systems in aircrafts today, since the OPC was phased out in 2014. So after the OPC phased out in 2014, pilots did use the performance weight and balance, but now as of today, they are using Flight Suite, which was developed in 2023. And Flight Suite will tell you exactly what you need to know about if you can land or if you can't land. So I have an example here of that. So you can see here, if the winds were calm and it was medium to poor, you would see that you would be able to land at these runways using the Auto Brake 3, Auto Brake Max. And these are all the runways. 3-1 Center is actually not in use anymore at Chicago Midway. I have another one. This is actually a different one. You can see here that if the winds were what they were, 110 at 11 knots, 3-1 right is unavailable. So that's important to note that you cannot land on the runway. It will tell you right away that you cannot land there. And then you would have to use Auto Brake Max and Auto Brake 3 to land on those runways. And then I wanted to point out that Midway has a history of runway risk. I wanted to say, remember when I told you guys to remember the date, December 8th, that's the day that this crash happened. So on December 8th in 1972, a United flight actually ended up crashing into a neighborhood in Chicago Midway's area. So, and then after that, December 8th, or before that, December 18th, 1949, a TWA airline actually did the same thing that happened with Southwest 1248. They blew through the blast fence and they ended up crashing on the street. This is actually across the street from a bar. So legend says that some of the passengers actually ended up getting off the plane and going across the street into the bar. So this just shows you that Midway has its history, which is why the FAA was in contact with Chicago Midway prior to this crash. There was something that they wanted to do because of Midway's runway risk. Here is my work section. Thank you. I want to thank the team for being flexible because they didn't have to stay for 2 hours. They did. I'm so grateful.
How'd you get Mr. Excitement to stay? He knows who he is. So he's I'm always here. He is always here. I always give him credit for that. He is always here. Probably knows this lab better than anybody else here. Go ahead.
Where would the airplane have ended up if the car wasn't there?
So there was actually a gas station in that area. So that could have been a big risk to Chicago. Maybe Midway would close for good at that point.
It would have been really bad.
Yeah. Do you know after the crash that the EMS system was implemented, or that was the reason why the EMS system was invented?
Yeah, invented?
Or was it implemented before that crash, like at other airports?
EMS system was already around. They just didn't have it implemented at every airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me what happened with 1-3 Center.
1-3 Center?
Yep. 1-3 Charlie. What happened? The runway.
Did it turn into like a taxi?
Or was 1-3 3?
Yeah. Yeah.
What is it?
Now they use it as a taxiway instead.
Sure about that?
I think so. Does it? No.
I don't think so.
Is the Jeopardy music necessary?
You gotta do the music. I could be wrong, but I think that runway was recommissioned last year.
Recommissioned as in put in, back in use?
Mhm.
No, sir, it's not, it's
Not
not.
as, listen,
Okay.
not as center, but it's left.
So then what happened to the
Check,
original one?
check it out, man, you're right around.
June 2025.
I think that'll be reading stuff, see, that's what, see, that
What happened to the
problem.
original? What happened to the
Yeah,
original?
yeah, you, that's what the problem is, you think I was wrong.
What happened to the original Blue War Light?
That's what I'm saying.
So, now that's what he's talking about. Yeah, so they reconstructed the airport and, they actually turned that runway into left and the other one into right, and then made the current left the taxiway for the outgoing, incoming traffic to the runways. Yep, so the runway still exists with the new technology on it, it's just renamed.
Renamed, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
The heading never changed, it's still 1-3 and 3-1, so yeah. Captain, anything?
Yeah, this landing data,
Oh,
we have the same thing now. It's called something different. And it's printed out every time we land, we pull it up, and it tells you if you land. So because of this, again, our protocols come for crashes and deaths.
yeah.
Now we do landing data for all runways shorter than 8,000 feet.
Everything's shorter than 8?
Yeah, it's a whole bunch of stipulations, we just do it every time.
Yeah, so look, here's the deal. I've done enough of these to know. Outstanding. Outstanding. You know, we look for, you know, when you're doing a capstone, they get kind of rudimentary when it comes to the basic stuff. I think what really is impressive is when folks go that extra mile to show you either a crew issue that had to do with crew rest time and how it may have changed regulations as a result of, in this situation, changing the actual threshold pieces on either end of the runway so they could have more restrictions upon an airport that might have gone there for. Outstanding job playing the you know, we were both looking at the script like, that ain't in there, you know. Flaps 5, he's like, Cinco, what? He's all right, you know.
Hey, Cinco.
So, you know, you could tell that the crew was a little bit lighthearted in a situation where I think that the captain would agree. Most pilots who are getting ready to land in a situation with that kind of weather are not joking around. Because so many things can go wrong, especially with snow being on the runway. Everybody knows Chicago Midway with the winds coming off the lake and lake effect snow coming in. Nobody's kind of kidding around with that. And so it's interesting that they had such a cavalier, you know, demeanor about landing that day in Chicago. But I thought I love the fact that you're literally using no notes. The only thing you actually read was the script along with these guys. But you had your visuals down, you knew what you were talking about, you had your weather set up properly, the time of day set up properly. I don't see, Mr. Booker, anything that was missed. I think she was, you know, I keep a list in my office of the top dogs when they do these presentations. Your name just moved up in that list, so very nicely done. And I can tell you put the work in, and I appreciate that. And I know your classmates do as well, so it really shows Texas Southern University off. That's what we're proud of. Yeah, good job.
Hey, another great touch was when she said that the plane is actually flying right now in Norfolk.
Oh, yeah. That was, you're right.
Because when she mentioned about the plane and they fixed it, so I'm looking it up to see, well, where is it now? And then she said Norfolk, and I'm like, that's where it's going.
And that's incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That's that extra touch I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Oh, look at it. Yeah.
That's, you know,
That was extra, yeah.
Yeah, she just did that.
And I actually updated it each day.
and it was 3 minutes early. Yeah, you know, now I just looked at the tail number. I hope I never see it. But Southwest was, you know, normally when something like that happens, they usually decommission the airplane.
Right.
And when they decommission the airplane, it's typically based on what? How do they typically decommission an airplane after an incident or accident like that based on what? What is it?
Casualties?
Tell me how they deem, what do we count, when we look at an incident or accident, how do we typically know the difference between an incident and an accident? What are they based on?
The casualties and the damages to the aircraft.
The damages to the airplane, right? And so in this case, the Southwest and the insurance company, more in particular, right? The insurance company looked at the airplane and said, no, it's not a big enough loss. Now, watch this, this is cool stuff. What's the main reason why the airplane was not decommissioned?
They can fix it.
Yeah, they can fix it, but what was it about that particular airplane?
only one person had that.
No.
Pretty new
No.
system.
It was
What?
new.
Was that?
It was new.
Yeah, it was new.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a brand new
If it was,
airplane.
if it was an airplane had like 5,000 hours, something like that, they were like, hell no, we can rebuild this thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they spent on it.
You spend all this money on this airplane, so that played a lot into it. If it had been a 730 back in the day, that'd have been a 200 or 300 back in the day,
It was scrapped.
they would have said, nah, man, please, you know, we got 25,000, 30,000 miles of this airplane, get rid of it. But because of the age of the airplane, they decided to rebuild it. So they probably rebuilt the landing gear, replaced the engines, the tail section, the whole empennage area, the fuselage and all that was intact. Looked like the cockpit wasn't affected either. Looked like the radome got killed when they hit the, what hit the car? Was it the nose of the airplane or?
Yes, the nose.
Yeah, so they probably have to replace the radome on it. Let me see the front. Obviously the darn, oh, the little boy down in the, with the engine or no? Go back to that. I didn't see that before. Right, the one will show where the engine was right there. Is that a car?
That is a car.
Right, that's how he died.
Yes, and he died on impact.
Oh,
He
damn.
died on impact.
Oh, man.
So imagine being in the car with your son, your 6-year-old son, and he's dead, and there's nothing that you can do because you probably can't even get out the car.
Shoot, who was it, mom or dad driving?
Mom, dad, brother, and sister. So actually, I did a little bit more research actually into the accident,
Yeah.
and, after they got their settlement, they ended up buying a house, so the dad, the dad ended up.
Big house.
The dad ended up, committing suicide, and, the two other.
In this car was a mom, a dad, a mom,
Yes,
and how many kids?
3 kids.
And 3 kids in the car.
Yes.
One of them died, the other 2 kids survived, and the dad ended up committing suicide. Damn,
That's crazy.
that is wild.
Did he commit suicide? How many years after that did he say or no?
No, it didn't say.
Yeah, just you knowing that though.
Yeah, just you knowing that show a lot.
Yeah, that's extra. Yeah, great job, Taylor.
Hey, Dr. Fontaine,
Yeah.
we have a volunteer capstone now. From this point on, Captain Berry stuck around a little bit and watched Fallahun and Madison's practice and kind of jumped on me why I didn't inform him that someone was doing something with Southwest. So he told me yesterday, anytime moving forward, anyone does something Southwest, call him. He helped her yesterday.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
he actually gave me those new,
Screenshots.
those new visuals for what the pads are using.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And, oh, there is one thing. Reverse thrust. Say,
Reverse thrust.
reverse.